We're going to look at um, Sir Joshua Reynolds' Miss Abington as Miss Prue. Well, I love this piece. He depicts an intimate portrait of a 35-year-old former prostitute turned famous actress in 1695 with her comedy play called Love for Love. Now, it portrays a clever little country character called Miss Prue. Now, country fresh, but she's still this lusty woman. Look at her, direct gaze at the viewer, dressed in this elaborate kind of dress with these black silk bracelets, piled up hair. She radiates as a sexual person. She's defiant of social refinement and decorum as she sits backwards in the chair, draping herself over the edge. And oh my gosh, this pose was a no-no. People had a fit over this painting because of it. She is distractedly pressing her thumb to her lips, which is very suggestive and considered a bit vulgar for that time. The painting is compact and intimate. It feels direct, blunt, unabashed, playful with sensual seduction. There's a suggestion of nature in the background with this soft blurring of colors to indicate the sky and the sea. It uses this diamond-like composition for the eye to travel around the canvas and back to the sitter's face. Very playful expression of female lust. He is able to capture the freshness of a child mixed with that of adult sexuality. We're looking at Benjamin West. He was an American painter of historical scenes around and after the time of the American War of Independence. He is the second president of the Royal Academy in London, and West was close friends to Benjamin Franklin, whose portrait he painted here. Franklin was also the godfather to West's second son, Benjamin. And this is a little over 13 inches by 10 inches. It's a portrait of Franklin celebrating his discovery that lightning is natural electricity. It is an oil sketch made by West as a study for a never executed larger painting. The figure of Franklin is not drawn from life, but is based on West's past acquaintances with Franklin. So the nature behind him is vigorous in the background and shown very powerful. This sense of excitement at something he probably shouldn't be doing, but he does it anyway. And yet we know that this is this discovery of electricity. And this is Ben's West, Death of the General. And it's a little over 59 inches by 84 inches. West depicts the general almost as a Christ-like figure. Notice the pose. This painting has a triangular composition like that of the Renaissance, made by the top of the flag and the position of the men. It resembles the Lamentations scenes where Christ is held in the embrace of the Virgin Mary. So he's given him particular importance here. We're looking at John Singleton Copley's. He's an American-born painter, active in both the colonial American and England. He is famous for his portrait paintings of important, figures in New England, and he liked depicting particularly the middle-class subjects. His paintings were innovative in their tendency to depict artifacts relating to these individual lives, and we certainly see that here in his Paul Revere. Now, his portraits endure as works of art because they transcend pure documentation to reveal clues as to the sitter's personality, profession, or even his social position. This is a little over 35 inches by a little over 28 inches, and he has painted the portrait of his friend, Paul Revere, about 1734 to about 1818. a full 7 years before Silversmith embarked upon his legendary Midnight Ride, and 5 years before he participated in the Boston Tea Party. And he kind of alludes to who he is through the use of these little still lifes within the portraits. We're looking at Watson and the Shark. This is a little over 71 inches by 90 inches. There were several versions of this particular theme that he explored. And we're looking at just one of those. The composition of the rescuers and the boat hints to that of, Peter Paul Rubens, Thrown from the Sea. Look at the facial expression. It portrays a range of emotions from fear to courage, a very tense moment, very real dangers of the sea being represented here. The various elements of the composition were changed as the painting progressed. He did this over and over again. If we looked and it was x-rayed, it would also show an old boatswain was originally a young man, and the preliminary sketches revealed that the black sailor at the rear of the boat was originally envisioned as a white man with this long flowing hair, and later changed. So there's many revisions of this out there. Look at this moment. She is here, this shark, the moment that he's about to just like snap his jaws shut, they are reaching out. He is in the sea, being kind of washed away. A real sense of danger here. We're looking at David's painting, The Oath of Horatti. Now, David was an influential French painter. He did historical paintings that marked a change in the taste away from the Rococo, being frivolous, towards a classical strictness and severity to heighten the moral climate. David attempted an art scholarship to the French Academy in Rome 5 times. At each failure, he became increasingly frustrated with the Academy for denying him the prize, and the dissatisfaction sowed the seeds of a long-standing grudge against the institution. Once he lost, according to legend, because he had not consulted with one of the judges. Another time he lost because a few other students had been competing for years and was allowed in while his education could wait, so to speak. After his loss in 1772, he engaged in a hunger strike, which ended after about 2.5 days when his professors called him in and encouraged him to continue painting. And reassured, he continues his study, only to fail to win once again the following year. And finally in 1774 he won, and while in Italy, David observed the Italian masterpieces and ruins of the ancient Rome. He filled almost 12 sketchbooks with materials that he could derive from for the rest of his life, and really turned towards the neoclassical style. And we see that here in one of his masterpieces, The Oath of Horatti, about 128 inches by 170 inches. It was done about 1784, and this would be right before the French Revolution. It depicts a scene from a Roman legend about a dispute between two warring cities, Rome and Alba Longa. Now, what we're seeing here is a father and his 3 triplet sons from a Roman family, the Horatti, agreeing to end the war with a rival family, the Carati, by fighting 3 brothers from that family. So the 3 brothers, all of whom appear willing to sacrifice their lives for the good of Rome, are shown kind of saluting their father. who holds their swords out in front of them. They are swearing to defend Rome. They're determined. They show their civic virtue, their patriotism. So think of how the context would eventually kind of result in the French Revolution. We see these men, they're stoic, courageous, while the women off to the side are tender and meek. And they are, well, two of them are the Horati's sister, having a connection to the rival family, the Horati, one being engaged to the brother of the rival family. So they are, they're weary, they're sad, they're anxious over the situation. And the story goes that the brothers go into battle, two brothers die, and only one returns, although he wins the battle for Rome. And the drama is when he comes back, he finds his sister crying because her brother killed her fiance. She's engaged to him, and her lover is dead. So she's crying and weeping, and the brother actually kills the sister because he thinks that by mourning the enemy, she's betraying the Republic. So he's sentenced to die, but the brother actually gets out of the death sentence. And look at the background. It's very neoclassical in nature. It's kind of de-emphasizing the background and pushing us towards the foreground. We see these symbolic symbolism of threes. Here's the three brothers, the three women, and if you notice in the background, the three columns, and even the three swords in the father's hands. Now, it has clear, hard brush strokes with classical attire, which is very neoclassicalism. Now, notice that the swords have two straights and one curve, and this kind of hints to that only one brother will survive, and also is reflected in his red attire that reflects his father's, further indicating this. We're looking at another masterpiece by David, and this is The Death of the Marat. It's 65 inches by 50 inches, painted during the French Revolution that started in 1789. This is painted in 1793. Now remember, in 1792, France becomes a republic, and in 1793, the Marat is murdered. David's signature is actually documented on supporting the beheading of King Louis XVI. So this is a painting about the murdered French revolutionary leader Marat. It was one of the most famous images of the revolution, and he was requested to create 3 paintings of political martyrs. Now, it kind of replaces the religious martyrs that we've been seeing back in Christian art. So David is the leading French painter. The painting depicts the radical journalist lying dead in his bath on July 13th, 1793, after his murder by Charlotte Corday. Now, you can see the bloody knife she used to kill him there just by his hand. David shows this noble man who is brutally murdered. Now, he did have a skin disease that required him to sit in baths for hours, but David shows his friend ideally beautiful here and likens him to that of the Pieta Christ. This journalist was writing about things the higher-ups they just didn't like, and his writing caused such a stir and got people to start questioning things. Well, so they get this lady to pose as a petitioner, and as the writer is signing the petition, she stabs him to death. Now, David is distraught over his best friend's murder. This is highlighting the freedom of speech and writing and how these disciplines are often silenced. So he painted this in remembrance of the writer who was silenced by this murder. Soon, the revolutionaries turn on each other, and David is actually in prison, but later released, and he ends up being Napoleon's court painter.